Well, I'm glad that half of the room stayed, which means you all really care about this topic. So it should be, hopefully an even better discussion that way. So we'll just kick off quickly by quick introductions from everyone. 30 to 60 seconds on, no more than a sentence on who you are and what you do, but mostly on what you do with regards to social, local, mobile, and start.
So clearly, if you're looking at the scheduler, then I'm replacing Imthiaz. Imthiaz has far lesser hair than I have, so I'm glad. Anyway, that was a bad joke. But my name is Madan Sanglekar. I represent a company as a co-founder and CEO. Company is adtech. We are one of the startup agencies specializing in mobile advertising. And from a SoLoMo perspective, we feel an important aspect, a missing aspect in the ecosystem, which is representing the brand. And we find this ecosystem so heavily focused towards the publisher and the sales side. So the opportunity was to be at a brand side and help a brand figure out how to use mobile as a medium, help them use social and local capabilities very well. Yep.
Hi, I'm Suresh. I run Telibrahma. I probably run one of the world's most biggest and most successful location-based services business right here from India. And we believe we are making the whole location-based services much simpler in this country. That's what we are doing.
Hi, I'm Valerie Wagoner, and I'm founder and CEO of Zipdial. And what we're doing is creating engagement between consumers and advertisers through an extremely simple user interface, which starts with a missed call. So very, very relevant to this kind of market. And we'll talk more about it later, but we believe in every experience for a consumer should be personalized and targeted. And of course, locality and social connections and whatnot are a key point for that kind of personalized experience. So that's a lot of what we enable through our engagement on Zipdial.
Hi, my name is Ramakrishnan, and I represent Cafe Coffee Day. Being Cafe Coffee Day, I think over the years we've understood what location is. And over the last 3 years, to some extent, we are trying to understand what social is, and to some extent enable it through mobile as well. But the whole concept of integrating all the three, we are honestly grappling with it.
Hi, my name is Satya. I'm the CEO of Sulekha.com. Sulekha is primarily a local commerce marketplace around multiple areas of interest, which includes property, cars, and home needs, education, and so on. So Sulekha has served close to 100,000 small to medium businesses across India, which have chosen to advertise with us to reach out to local consumers interested in specific services and products. Plus, we have served over 1,500 corporate brands and agencies who are also trying to reach out to consumers who are oriented toward transactions. I think what Sulekha is looking at is to cultivate these local marketplaces around needs that will bring together brands, small to medium businesses, and users who are oriented towards commerce in terms of whether they're engaging in interactions or transactions oriented towards commerce. And for us, the biggest problem we're trying to solve is one of discovery, where businesses are trying to find consumers who are inclined towards what they want to sell, and consumers are trying to discover what is there to buy. I think there is a tremendous amount of inefficiency and therefore opportunity in that space.
Great. So we'll just quickly start the last session talking about apps, obviously for smartphones. And one of the questions was about, is it all about games, or is it also, what else is working well with apps and what else is important? And the answer was SoLoMo. So that's a nice lead-in. So my question dovetails off of that and says, is it about apps, and is it about smartphone users, or who is this for? What are the consumers we're addressing with this opportunity, and therefore, does that, who are the advertisers that are relevant? So, who wants to start?
I can take that. So, I think Shiv made a great point in the morning that very difficult to define what a smartphone is. It's consumer who defines. So is it all about apps? Of course it's not all about apps. Is it about smartphone? Definitely at this stage in India, it's not about smartphone. But will it be there? Of course it will be there. I think let's understand what a phone does. It allows you to call, allows you to text messages, allows you to use any of the proximity tools in it to exchange content. It allows you to do everything that internet allows you to do. It's got an accelerometer in some cases, so it allows you to shake the phone, some content happens. So anything the phone can do, okay, and as long as people are using it. So for some TG, so for a cabbie or a farmer, it's probably the call or the message that works. But you go to the other end and probably a chairman or CEO of a company, the internet and the smartphone applications work. And so the reality is everywhere, everything in between. I think the way we look at India today, we are more feature phone driven, and everything that a feature phone can allow in terms of even applications to some extent allow business, marketing, consumers to connect locally or otherwise is where mobile will play a role. Of course, as we look into the future, we look more in terms of what role smartphone will play, because we all believe that the market will be a smartphone and a tablet market as we go ahead, and the features would be more internet and connectivity driven, which may not be the case today, and today we need to look at everything possible. And the TG, now here is a point in mobile, like take a brand like Lifebuoy. Would Lifebuoy would be on digital, on Facebook? Maybe not, maybe yes, but most likely not. And hence you think that, oh, this is not a brand for digital. But can Lifebuoy be on mobile? Of course. I mean, almost everybody who would use a product like that, even the tier 3, tier 4 towns, cities, would have a phone. So why not? Yeah.
Does anybody disagree?
No, not disagree, but I think just to answer coming back to your question, I think it's not about mode in India. It's always about relevance. Okay, and is the SoLoMo strategy that you have, is it relevant to the target customers whom you are talking to? I want to quote one example. Okay, around 2-3 years back, there was an experiment with a Vasavi temple in some small town temple near Coimbatore. Okay, so which was about delivering shlokas and wallpapers of the goddess to the consumers who are there. Okay, and it's a location, people who go to that location. Okay, and it's about social, because we are talking about spirituality as well, so in the social gathering. Okay, and the whole idea was to deliver shlokas and wallpaper of the goddess to the consumers who were there in that temple. Very, very small town temple, and we got amazing results, right? So we got amazing results, and in fact, temple was so happy that they continued to. So it's about relevance in India. I don't think it's about smartphones. It's about what's the grand act you can do, right? How you can think local and think social.
Yeah. So that's I think that Madan especially touched on a couple key points, that it's really not just smartphones. And talking to, say, a Silicon Valley audience, that's probably all they're thinking about. But we're sitting here in a market where 96% of people are on feature phones, but we can still detect some location, give them targeted content, etc. We'll kind of move off of Suresh's point about the social, which I would argue the idea that it's a temple in spirituality is not social. Social is about me connecting with another person, or me sharing something with another person. The fact that it's religion or a social cause is just content.
Okay.
But and that I think is a key thing that we're in a lot of ways. It's a lot more obvious how local impacts marketing, especially if you're a retailer, for example. But what about social, and what is working, especially in India? I know Ramki has done a lot in that regard, and I don't want to necessarily focus on how we're using Facebook and Twitter today, but what more can we do in this context of 700 million people who have feature phones, and we can detect their location? And how does social mean there? Is it all about just sharing your experience on Facebook, or is there something more inherently social that we can enable? I mean, I have my own personal answers for this, but I'll open it up first.
Like you said, I'm not going to belabor the point about social and Facebook. But what I would like to say is that as a brand, we are kind of neutral to medium. So if it's Facebook, so be it. And if we are happy with the results that we get out of it, we continue to be as happy about it at all points of time. Secondly, just coming back a bit to the point about the inclusiveness of saying smartphones 5%, 95% non. It's actually for a brand like, let's say, Cafe Coffee Day, which is a retailer. We have about 1,300 odd outlets across the country. And it's difficult for us to pinpoint and say, this guy is my consumer. So therefore, he's, very often people say, oh, CCD, you have very really young customers, so it must be easy connecting with them through digital and stuff. But again, this 5% is possibly a bigger number among the kind of people that actually habit at a Cafe Coffee Day. So to that extent, what we believe is that this whole thing about SoLoMo is not restricted to any medium, any instrument, any device. The whole idea is to see how can we, it's all, at the center of this is the consumer. So you enable him or her in any which way to reach out to you. If that any which way be a missed call, as you do, so be it. If that any which way is through Bluetooth, so be it. So from our perspective, the way we start this whole process is to say, okay, this is perhaps how our consumer behaves. And there are, let's say, 5, 6 types of consumers whom we are trying to address. I say that because we have cafes in different kinds of locations. There are a certain set of cafes in, let's say, a corporate location where the needs and insights are different. There are cafes in a complete high street near a college. The insights are different, highways are different. So each of these, depending upon where they are, we enable them to be able to participate in this process of this SoLoMo. To give you an example of one of the services of even Zipdial that we've collaborated with, which is if there is a need for somebody to provide feedback, forever there have been physical forms. I think they've been done to death and people don't care for them anymore. The next was to say, do I go to a social media and present a point? Do I tweet about it? Again, the numbers are small. But how do we enable everyone with the least effort to be able to participate and make a point about the location that they are in? So we're doing an experiment. We don't know how it will pan out, but the experiment is very simply unhappy, give a missed call to this number. Happy, give a missed call to another number. It's even lesser effort than a texting. So that's what I'm trying to say through this point is that irrespective of medium, irrespective of platform, it is just being as ubiquitous as possible as enabling the consumer to act to the extent that you want them to act. And not only a question of acting, and if you're able to feed that back to them in terms of an action, that is when it becomes social. If it's just a question of action coming to you and there's nothing that you do about it, then it stops right there. Then it becomes social. So that's where I see the three coming together, social, local, and mobile.
The way I would step back and try to frame the issue, frame the problem in terms of this local retailing. If you take a lot of local brands, whether it include electronics retailers, jewelers, lifestyle, variety of goods that you're doing, from the viewpoint of the retailer, he is faced with a series of issues which have become exacerbated in the last 4 or 5 years. Number one is there is an enormous velocity of turnover of products that he is selling. Whether you look at apparel or electronics or goods, things are changing, new products are coming. That's one problem. And the offers and the pricing around these things is also becoming more variable and dynamic per day. In the sense you can set the prices, people are offering lower prices. If you buy this, I'll get the second for free, 50% off, this, that. The third one is there is hyper competition. Right? There is so many other options, both online and offline for the retailer to contend with. The fourth issue that he has to face is the means through which he has to communicate what he has to sell are becoming very expensive in the mainstream media. So I have an interesting set of things to sell. I have an exciting offer prices on these things, and I have to move these products. But how do I communicate this to a willing and enthusiastic audience? That is the problem that the retailer faces on this end, which is becoming increasingly difficult for them to be able to sell things. From the viewpoint of the consumer, we are facing another set of issues, which is there are so many options now, both online and offline. Everybody is selling a variety of different things. New products are coming, right? And some of these things, my needs are two kinds of needs I have. One is I have an explicit need, which is today I need something, I know I want it, I know I want to buy it, I go looking for it. Right? There I search, I do my investigation, and I figure out what I want to buy. For every one of those explicit needs, every human being has 4 to 5 latent wants. I mean, these are things that you would buy if you are presented with something that is exciting and at a reasonable price, at an exciting price. So from the consumer's point of view, he has an issue of discovery. You know, how will I figure out what is available for sale and what is it that interests me in this whole world of products and services that are there. So if I were to crystallize the issue on both sides, there is a tremendous inefficiency of transactional information, both from the retailer wanting to communicate and the consumer wanting to discover what is there to buy. If there is a way in which this problem can be solved, and I think the phone is a medium, it's not a solution. It's a medium to solve the problem. But if you can, if the real thing is to be able to use the social and local network, because even though all of us here in this room are quite, partial to e-commerce because we're all in the digital medium, but like actually politics, all commerce is local. You know, if you look at $100 or 1,000 rupees spent by individual being, whereas in the US or India, I would say about 97 rupees, 98 rupees is spent locally. And that is also spent within a 10-kilometer radius of where he lives. So the commerce is local. And discovery through social means, in the sense, if I have somebody who can recommend to me, who I trust, that would facilitate my discovery. And if the brand can cultivate a followership of where you are able to communicate to these people, saying that today I have these things to offer, so that to trigger that latent want, that the consumer doesn't know he wants it, the user doesn't know she wants to buy it, and to be able to present those things, I think therein lies the opportunity both for retailers and consumers and anybody who can facilitate that in the middle.
You bring up an important point about making it a real world outcome, and that's a lot of the value of local is because you're in the vicinity, you can actually transact, right. and there's there's a lot of interesting developments where, let's say, even someone like Groupon is going more towards a point of sale and a right. transactional and a loyalty and things like that, which is more difficult in a market like this where people are paying in cash and retail is unorganized and less is franchised and things like that. Right. So, I'm not sure that I don't. If you have other comments.
No, you're absolutely correct. You know, from where you are, you know, if you look at where you spend the money, if you track it on a scale, for every kilometer away, your odds of buying it from the retailer drops exponentially. In the sense, for the same thing, even if you're going to save 1,000 rupees, you are not going to drive 15, 20 kilometers to save 1,000 rupees. It just won't happen. So the physical proximity is such a crucial determinant. And the referral from a social network is such a crucial determinant in people wanting to buy. And that's what we found out.
Valerie, just to add to what Satya is saying, okay, there are many case studies, okay, many examples that we can quote by just delivering a message which is right for that location, for that consumer, right? So the efficiency of your message delivery or efficiency of the results will go up by 4 or 5 times. There are many number of examples that we can quote. Okay, recently there was a campaign that was done with a major apparel brand. Okay, so there were 3 different experiments happened. One was pure social, which was not related to location. Second one was pure location. Third one was location plus Facebook. Okay, I mean location plus Facebook. Okay, where you can combine that. We can clearly see a 3 times or 4 times increase in each strategy. Okay, and from no targeting to location and location plus social targeting. Okay, there is a demonstrable results not only in US but even in India.
I'm just going to ask the audience for a raise of hands. Well, first off, who is a brand or an advertiser or someone who's consuming this kind of? Okay, not very many, but okay. So part of what we were discussing earlier when we were preparing was. Especially coming from a consumer technology kind of background and, and Satya and everyone, I believe in the power of targeting. And I'm like, gosh, sitting in India where there's how many hundreds of different dialects, and basically it's like 3 dozen countries stuffed into one, yet everybody gets cricket and Bollywood. And so there's so much diversity, yet so much, same streamlined message for everyone. And so there's so much room to personalize. And Ramki was saying, personalization is conceptually is great, but it's so far out of reach for me right now. And I don't know what to do with that level of depth yet. There's 3-4 steps in between. And, and Satya's talking about the power of this, tons of content on one side of inventory and price changes and whatnot, and tons of consumption and latent needs on the other side, and connecting that. Is it, up for especially the marketers in the room, how many people think that personalization at a local, social, mobile kind of level is something you can consume today? Or do you, well, maybe, I'm not sure if I didn't frame the question specifically, but if you had the ability to connect with people at a level of understanding, are they male or female, do they have children or not, are they in this neighborhood or that neighborhood, does that make a difference for you today, or is that too much information right now? Who does it make a difference for? Who could actually target on that basis? It looks like most of the marketers in the room. Anybody say no? Anybody say too much information, too complex? Okay, so that's a little bit of validation that there's a need to have more information. And we've talked about how all consumers essentially, whether it's through Bluetooth, through zip dialing, through internet, there's lots of different modes to connect. And so
I can add on that. So it's not about too much information, it's about relevant information. So this one example I give too many times, so I'm sorry if I'm saying it again, but there's a bakery in London, it's a corner bakery, and go to YouTube and search for baker tweet. What I like about it, they've connected their hardware to Twitter. So every time something comes out of the oven, based on what comes out of the oven, a tweet goes. So if you have fresh baked cheesecakes coming out, a tweet goes that cheesecakes are out. What happens? They don't have too many followers. They have probably 500 odd followers, but you know what? It's a corner bakery. You don't expect too many followers. Every time there's a tweet out, 20 odd people stand in a queue, and voila, the things are sold. Now, the technology is very social. It's reaching out to people locally, and most often than not, people are checking this on the mobile phone. That hey, something is out. I want this while it's warm and hot. I'll go and get it. Okay. So it's all about relevant. Now, in this case, what's relevant is the time and the product. In some other case, I've heard about I've heard about an insurance company which is using mobile technology, which is connected to the car. Not too much social, or local, but look at what the technology does. Depending upon how bad or good the driver is, the data is captured, stored in the iCloud. When you renew your premium is positive or negative 10%, depending on how good it was. So it's relevant data. It's as long as you can capture relevant data, the medium would allow the brand to connect with the consumer, do something about it. So it's largely got to do with how do you use the data, and can that data help you and influence your consumer in a particular way.
Yeah, and not just capturing, but also the usability of it, and how do you take action on that data? And a brand manager can't sit with a huge dump of geolocations of people and what their individual profiles are, nor would that be very good from a privacy perspective. but how can whatever platforms some of us are building create actionable intelligence that gives them key insights or can target automatically as people are engaging.
Also, if you link with the data that is happening, so while we know that mobile internet is crossing PC internet, look at what's happening separately, and something that Ramki would like to know. So one is all the searches which are happening around fast food related products. Okay, they are definitely crossed the PC searches. The mobile searches on anything related to fast food today in India has crossed PC level search. You talked about cricket. So in cricket, while cricket as a category is still PC strong search category, but the live score is going very high on mobile. So clear indication is things that are here and now, and link it to Satya's point where things around 10-kilometer vicinity. So cricket, just an example to say what is more relevant. So I don't need to know. So if I want to know how many which all cities have Sachin scored a century, I'll go to the PC. But I want to know the score right now. There's a match happening between New Zealand and Sri Lanka as we speak. I want to score now. That search query on mobile is going high.
I just would like to make one point. I think, Madan, you gave a good example of this bakery in London. I don't think the consumer interest is in the bakery as a brand or as a business that they know exists. Right? I know eZone exists. I know it is an electronics retailer. I can trust it. It is a big retailer. But what is of interest to me is not eZone as a brand, but what specifically eZone has to offer today. That is of interest to me, right? Now, that is also hard for eZone to, right? Like this guy, he has got a small set of followers who's tweeting that, the fresh bread is out of the oven. In a small scale, it is possible. But how does someone like eZone do that? How do it say, today I have these 18 items for sale at this price?
Satya, that's what we do. Okay, so this is what we said. Oops. Okay, yeah. Okay, so just to add to what Satya was talking about, okay, or what he was telling. See, all of us were grown up, okay, in mobile industry thinking that mobile is for microtransaction. Okay, so for us, only thing that made sense on mobile 5 years back is stock trading because that's microtransaction, right? So what was extremely relevant, extremely short life span is what we thought will be relevant on mobile. But I think today the game has changed. Biggest users of social media are on mobile, okay, and the reason why we are talking about SoLoMo is that the biggest usage of Facebook happens on mobile even in India. So there is lot more larger, okay, even non-micro transactions have started happening on mobile. In US today, if I go and talk to any startups, they will build a mobile website before they build a PC-based website. So the transactions are happening on mobile even beyond what you call as micro transactions, right? So that creates a different opportunity and new opportunity, which may not be just the relevance in terms of, let's say, that lifespan, but in terms of your ability to talk to them based on where they are. Okay, I mean that's where the location comes in. Okay, it's right. So reach is one important thing that has changed on mobile. Okay, in last 3-4 years, we never thought there will be a lot more users of search on mobile than PC. Okay, some of the point that he was talking about. So that means we need to think much beyond just the micro targeting.
I just want to qualify that discussion on personalization. I mean, just wanted to highlight. Yeah. So fundamentally, what we're saying is, okay, personalization is great. I mean, when you talk to any tech person, anybody who's into data analytics and stuff, they tell you need to be able to personalize it to one individual. How Satya behaves, please give him something. For example, let me take the example of Cafe Coffee, but that's the only thing that I know. So if I find, so what is the fundamental role of most loyalty programs? Like you try to understand consumer behavior, and hopefully, using that understanding, you try to influence behavior. That's what you do. So supposing I have understood that Satya visits a cafe twice a week, right? Then I think, okay, this guy visits twice a week. I need to tell him that you come a third time and I'll give you something, right? So therefore, that is absolutely tailor-made for Satya. But just when I'm about to say that I'm going to give it to Satya, there are 5 others who say, hey, what's the problem? Give it to everybody. It'll probably be more relevant for Satya, but the others will come as well. So personalization is important, but it's not the only situation. And in my view, considering most brands that we have, personalization is a little too far to achieve. That's probably ideal. And there are some 15 steps on the way. And one of those steps is what we're discussing right now, which is being local. In the location that the person or persons are, can we offer something that is relevant to them, addressing this 5-kilometer barrier or any of those, or that example of the bakery. So personalization is important, but I think that's a few notches away. Let's first address many more before we reach there is what I think.
In many ways for your business, personalization is sort of naturally happening by the fact that you're experiencing your brand and your outlets is a very social experience. It's a very personal experience. I'm there with my friends. I'm there with my family, whatever. And even like you were saying, how you use Facebook and whatnot is very much just creating an opportunity for people to interact. So in a way, it's sort of naturally personalizing itself. You know, I like this brownie or I liked this blueberry cheesecake, and people who like the brownie will like the brownie, and you know, but it's other types of brands, whether it's consumer electronics or apparel, which are less inherently social, may see a bigger differentiator by being able to personalize using their content and their inventory and whatnot. Maybe we should open up for questions.
Do we?
Everybody's sleeping or checking their email or?
No, not that way.
Or we've answered all
We've
the
wrapped up on the other end as well. So if there are any questions, probably we could take that offline as well. We could do that bit as well. So on that note, we could probably have you want to have some summary in terms of probably just summarizing how your panel went by and giving some close-by tips?
So there's a few points that came out. It's the opportunity in social, local, and mobile is really to cut through the noise, as Satya described, about this abundance of information and abundance of need, but no way to connect that. And it's really about personalizing to cut through that kind of noise. There's a lot of opportunity in a market like India where even on a feature phone, which most of the market has, you can use things like missed calls or what have you to actually still connect with a consumer, but it also translates into challenges about staying engaged with that person when they're not necessarily downloading an app that is that they're regularly checking or is regularly sending them notifications, but it becomes a slightly different kind of medium like SMS. So, and then of course challenges of there's lots of retail chains, for example, that Suresh is working in, but we know that 90% of retail that happens is unorganized or small businesses that Satya knows very well. So there's a huge amount of opportunity in the fact that consumers are connected and it doesn't matter what device they have, but there's also very interesting complexities that this market and markets like this offer, which is what we'll all be figuring out over the next years to come.
Yeah, just to add 2 bits to that, you mentioned cutting out the noise, and I think as a person who represents a brand, all I would like to say to all people who handle brands or support brands is the fact that you also need to cut out the noise about what you hear about SoLoMo and see what's most relevant for your brand at that point of time. And when possible, one of the things that I say is a good way to start is possibly mapping out what all are the interactions that your consumer has with your brand and to his world in general, and actually in an attempt to be as ubiquitous as you can in terms of this enablement. So if the enablement of this SoLoMo is through a phone, so be it. Through a missed call, so be it. Through an SMS, so be it. And through an app, so be it. And one doesn't have to really get judgmental about, oh, does it have enough numbers? Do I have to be there? I mean, actually, it pays to be ubiquitous because one never is able to really take a call on which is going to take the peak the next week, right? So I certainly believe there's a lot of room and need for experimentation for brands to enable their consumers to participate in this game, about which our whole businesses are.
And then what, as we were talking about earlier, we know there's a lot of room for experimentation and trying things and being ubiquitous, but if I have to prioritize as a brand and invest resources, where do I do that? And you do it internally, but how should somebody else start who isn't experimenting as much as you?
No, I think there's a lot of noise on this, right? So internal, it helps if you have somebody internal, but otherwise also there's enough agencies, enough experts out there who are willing to lend time for a price in terms of trying to figure out how to get this started.